Hi guys, and welcome to the first webinar for the nutrition course. A couple of housekeeping points, there is some building work going on next door, which obviously is great when you're trying to film videos, and I'm going to work on the lighting a little bit for this room, but nonetheless we're going to crack on because this webinar is really just to ring fence week one, clear some expectations, clear some kind of standards and things like that, what to expect, but also summarise your food diary and where we're at going into week two, where we're really hoping to kick things off. So I'm going to run through most things that I've got on the board, and then hopefully over the next 10 minutes you'll be super clear as to how this next kind of 5 weeks is going to go forwards and what you can take from the week. So to start with, expectations. Obviously most of you filled in the questions when you joined the group, and a large part of the focus was around emotional eating, fueling performance and behaviour. So that was where we were streamlining the course towards anyway, so kind of a couple of runs above the information that we may provide on a day-to-day basis for nutrition. So getting a little bit nitty-gritty, getting a little bit specific for you all as well. That's why the course was limited, so we can work with you all in a group basis over the next kind of 6 weeks, but also getting plenty of one-to-one kind of interaction and a chance to go through some specifics for each of you as well. So expectations in terms of like the Q&As and things like that. Each Q&A you'll have seen already this week, we'll have a post go up about it. You can put your questions there, whether you're attending or not, you can put your questions there, because that may help me research a little bit of extra information that I may or may not need. Especially if you're not attending, put your question in, because then when I go live, I can obviously answer that question, but I can also answer any questions that come in as I'm live as well. Now, obviously for live Q&As to work, I do need questions to go through. I've got ideas in the back of my head as to how I can expand on some webinar topics within these Q&As, but it's your nutrition course, so it's better being specific to you guys. So if you have specific questions about nutrition, habits, behaviour change, performance, this is the next 6 weeks to ask me as many of those questions as possible, whether it's in the group or obviously us going through it on these Q&As. Food diary, you all had the week building up to the course to compile a food diary and obviously send it across to me. Now throughout this week you've been getting your individual feedback via email from myself and Sam. We've sat down, we've gone through calculations, we've looked at certain things, and you've all been given really specific feedback with at least 3 work-on points for the next couple of weeks. We will also keep checking in with you throughout that time, and we'll go through a food diary again at the end, so the final week of the course, where you'll then finish the course with some more personal feedback going into that next week. So there's plenty of time to get us to have a real deep dive into your nutrition and give you specific, measurable, actionable feedback for you to take forwards. So super important that if you've got any questions on your feedback, chuck them into the group, chuck them into the Q&As, and I can start answering them. The Q&As are designed to be specific. Your question that you may ask, somebody else may be thinking it. Your question may give somebody else a different question. So that's where that group environment really is beneficial, but you still get that specific tailored response to your question. So the feedback is super important. Take your time reading it and ask any questions. The webinars. So most of the webinars are going to be recorded as we go through the course, because I'm going to either expand on a Q&A topic or it will go vice versa. So I've got a system in place that I know roughly where I want to take the webinars in terms of content. The webinars I'll try and keep to 10 to 15 minutes at a push, maybe 20, because I know you're all busy people, and I'll keep them specific, okay? There is a couple of webinars, including one next week, that kind of finishes off the foundations, where it's already been recorded. It was recorded like over a year ago for example, from online client perspective, I did a video on macronutrients. Now, some of you in this group will really benefit from just gaining a quick flashback as to what macronutrients are, protein, fats, carbs, how they work, how they operate, what calories they take up, etc, etc. But rather than that being a focus point of the course, we've put that in as a webinar that you can watch if you want to top up that information. So there'll be a couple of webinars like that coming out, but for the most part, they will be recorded on performance, behaviour, emotion, habits, and obviously specific in-depth questions that I can provide more feedback on than in the Q&A as well. So expect the webinars to be informative, short, concise, but relatable to what we're trying to do, which is look at your nutrition as an everyday athlete. And that's what we're calling, that's what I want you guys to start referring to as. You know, most of you are maybe at least a couple of sessions a week, whether that's 2 boot camps or boot camps and runs or boot camps and cycles or getting into the gym, or you know, whether it may be kind of returning to training, having had a child and things like that. I know there's somebody in the group that sits in that bracket. It's about looking at yourself as an everyday athlete. If you look at yourself that way, chances are you'll start fueling yourself better. Athletes fuel themselves really well, as in they allow themselves to eat plenty of calories, the right calories within balance for their goals, that allow them to train really well, perform really well, and then depending on their goal, depending on your goal, also drop body fat at the same time. And that's fundamentally the balance that we're trying to strike. How can we perform as optimally as possible? And if we are trying to drop body fat, how can we fuel for that and still allow for that goal to happen as well? So there is a task on Monday whereby we're going to ask you to do a self-reflection on your food shop. If you haven't done your food shop over the weekend, don't panic. Just do a self-reflection on the food available within your house at that given point. So there is a task on Monday coming out Monday evening. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. It's a really nice reflective task. If you want to write a list, write a list. If you want to take a picture, take a picture. I'm not asking you to take a picture of your full food shop, but when the task comes out, it'll be super clear, and it's going to allow us to build on what has been the most common takeaway and the most common thing that I've said for years and years is focusing on protein. I'm going to leave that task there. You'll find out more about it for Monday. And then the key one to think of is accountability, okay? Be accountable to the group. It's 6 weeks, it's a short course. Be accountable to the group, be accountable to yourself, be accountable to Sam and I, be accountable to the course, okay? We will check in with you as we go through the course. You'll have your 2 food diary check-ins, like we said, start and finish. But also within the course, we'll check in, we'll see if the points that we've given you are achievable, how your performance is feeling, have you got any considerations, have you been able to change X, Y, and Z? Okay, so you'll hear from us plenty over the next 6 weeks, but it's also about your participation, involvement, you know, taking that leap to make sure that you're participating, being involved, doing the work as such for a short period of time. More than likely, this course will take you no more than at a push, say an hour and a half a week, in terms of watching the live, watching the webinar, reading the posts that go out, doing a little bit of the homework, and then the actionable thinking about maybe your food diary or your tracking on MyFitnessPal or whatever it may or may not be. So be accountable to yourself and put the work in for us. And then last but not least, I want to touch on 2 key areas that we will talk about throughout the next 6 weeks. And that is habits and behaviour. So I thought it was key to define them early on before we build into them, because as we're looking at ourselves as an everyday athlete and as we're looking to better fuel our performance and just be better fueled for life in general, these are 2 key words that we need to consider. So when we're thinking about habits, they're a settled or regular tendency or practice that can be hard to change or give up, okay? The key word there for me is hard, because hard isn't impossible if it's a habit that doesn't serve you. So if it's a habit that doesn't serve you, you'd want to give it up or change it. We all, including myself, have habits with food that don't serve us. So that means if we look at this definition here, this is why I picked this one, it's hard to give up or change. That can be enough of a barrier, that can be enough of an obstacle just there in that sentence, okay? But hard isn't impossible. So it's trying to reframe it a little bit and coming at it from a different angle. Some habits, plenty of habits around food, around your life in general, that you have won't serve you. Some you'll do because of the enjoyment factor, but it doesn't necessarily serve your goals. So first and foremost, we've got to put those to one side. We've got to look at the ones that are serving our goals here and now, and then worry about the other ones that maybe we could do with changing but aren't going to impact us here and now. We can park them and come back to them later. So if you have habits around your nutrition right now, whether it be biscuits with cups of tea, whether it be mid-morning, mid-afternoon snack, whether it be that is that we could say is less than optimal or a suboptimal choice of food. Whether it be always wanting to finish like dinner with like a sweet thing afterwards, whether it be portion control, whether it be takeaways, whether it be social situations and things like that. There's different things in there that would be hard to change or hard to give up. But I'm going to come back to that term again. They're not necessarily impossible. What we've got to look at is what actually would mean something to us to change and how much do we want to make that change. Because if you want to make the change enough, you'll make it. It's as simple as that, okay? So start considering over this next week, whilst we're still touching on some fundamentals, what habits do you really want to start changing? Not necessarily giving up, but changing. What ones could you really do with giving up? Okay, if there is some and they're around food, we need to know about it, and then we can create an individual structure over the next 4 weeks to try, whilst you're accountable to the course, to change or give that habit up. That's what this course is all about. If there's a couple that we could do with changing, we want to try and at least create the framework to take you forward and change it over the coming weeks and months. And behaviour, the way in which a person behaves in response to a situation or stimulus. The key one for me here is stimulus, but we can look at situation in terms of a social situation as well, when I'm relating it just to food. But the stimulus, when you're presented with food in front of you, but also we can go, as I said, to social situations, restaurants, takeaways, etc., etc. How do you behave? What decisions do you make? What outcomes do they lead to? So there you can see how these two can easily interact with one another, okay? The decisions you make within social situations, within your family circle, how do they impact you? If you've got a really important goal, can you get your family on board? Can you start switching up your nutrition and their nutrition so it makes it easier for you? Or do you just need to have a conversation and be like, right, this is what I've got to eat for the next couple of weeks. I need your help and support on that. So when I'm eating this, please don't try and, force feed me X. That's a quite extreme example, but it can happen. So when it comes to your behaviour around food, the next word that we're going to come to throughout the next 6 weeks is that, because these two then link as well. So the emotion around the behaviour can link to a habit being formed that is hard to give up. What we've got to think about is where can we put breakers in here so that our nutritional habits aren't necessarily all ones that need changing or all ones that need giving up. They're habits that serve you and leave you striving towards being a happier, healthier, fitter, stronger version of yourself. So hopefully that's a really nice summary for what to expect over the next kind of 5-6 weeks. You've had your food diary, obviously I've had it in. Most of you will have had your feedback. If you haven't, you'll get it by Sunday. You've got a post and a bit of a task to look forward to on Monday. And again, the key thing throughout anything like this is accountability. Accountability to me and Sam and the Facebook group, those within it, but more than anything, accountability to yourself. Put yourself first over the next 6 weeks when it comes to your nutrition, and let's really ask some deep questions, work out and ingrain or change some ingrained habits, and treat yourself as an everyday athlete, and an athlete that wants to be as optimal as possible across every aspect of their life. Any questions on this, guys, shoot it below. Keep obviously looking at any notifications that go in the group. Feel free to share things within the group, and let's have an awesome course.